What's up, guys? Justin with Bite&Fight Angler. Now this video is, of course, I'm going to be shooting baits because I have to keep that going, but in this video it's going to be more about Bite&Fight Angler, how it got started, what it was started for, and what it's grown into now, and what it needs to get back to, as well as doing what it's doing now. So as a kid, my dad was a fisherman and a hunter, and I took up the fishing side pretty much. Wasn't really good at being quiet enough to be a hunter, so I kind of took up the fishing side and grew up fishing. Had some things that happened in my life, got away from it, and then I came back to fishing, but this was when I lived in Northeast Texas, so it was freshwater fishing. But when I got back into freshwater fishing, I wanted to know it all. I wanted to learn it all. I started studying it. I started watching everything I could. I started figuring out how to use different lures. I did bass fishing, which is where I used mainly the lures. I started doing a lot of crappie fishing, trying to figure out the patterns for them, the spawn times, the places that I could go to catch them, because I didn't have a boat, I didn't have a kayak, I was based off of land. And then on top of that, also catfish. And then I had to figure out how to catch the bait for the catfish, and how to, do all the different tactics to catch the catfish, and when do the catfish move, and so I was learning bass, crappie, catfish, all these things, and I was just going full blast on it, trying to figure out everything I could about learning how to be the best fisherman I could be at freshwater. Well, I was actually working a job that I ended up getting laid off at, and kind of put a halt on everything, and I had to come down here to work in the South Texas area. So now I'm around saltwater. So I went from fishing rivers and lakes and creeks that are compacted, looking for brush piles, looking for, overhangs, logs, docks, anything like that you could, find fish holding on, to this wide open gulf and wide open bays and things like that, and it was real overwhelming. I had no clue what to do. So the first thing I did, because I'm an angler, so I wanted to fish, but didn't really know where to look for fresh water that I knew how to fish and knew I could figure it out. So now I'm taking on a whole nother, form of fishing in my mind, being new to it and all. So I went to the bait shop, which at the time, or not at the time, it's still Hooker's Bait Shop down there in Freeport, because I was working in Freeport. And I asked the guy, I was like, how do you fish down here? And the first thing he told me is dead bait on the bottom, fish the intercoastal. So I went and found a spot on the intercoastal. I bought some dead shrimp. I went out there and fished it on the bottom. And yeah, I caught some little small, small fish, a lot of hard heads, some cool looking fish, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, because I had heard about the trout, reds, and flounder. Had no clue how to target any of these unless one of them just happened to swim by and pick my bait up. So I did as most anglers that are new to saltwater did. I fished that area, and I fished dead bait for a while. Tried to find new areas to fish the dead bait, but it just wasn't doing it for me. I was used to throwing lures for crappie, throwing lures for bass, and just throwing a line out and sitting there wasn't my thing. So then I started researching and talking to people, and they told me about going to the jetty and throwing live shrimp under a popping cork. So that was my next step. So that's what I did. I went and got some and tried to catch speckled trout. So that's what I did, and I ended up going out and I started catching speckled trout on popping cork and live shrimp. Even caught some Spanish mackerel. I did some free lining shrimp, and I caught some sheep's head and things like that, but still wasn't getting really any reds or anything like that. But I was on the game fish, so that started sparking me up. So that was how I thought uh, because I did at the time, I didn't realize that you could use freshwater lures for saltwater fish. So live shrimp was basically how I got started with everything, and that led to, you know, I started wading. Typically one of the first places that a lot of people find down here new to it is either going to be West Bay, wading out in West Bay, or wading out in Christmas Bay. So I took to Christmas Bay because it was a smaller body of water. I was used to fishing lakes, so I figured I could take that spot and I could break it down a little bit better, being that I have to wade. So that's what I did. I started wading and throwing live shrimp under a popping cork, and I was starting to catch more stuff, but it was more like sand trout. Sometimes I would get some speckled trout, things like that, but still no reds, no flounder. So the next step was getting a kayak. So I got a kayak, and I started kind of working towards the Churchill Bayou, that area down there. And I was using the popping cork and the shrimp, and I started kind of figuring out how to the areas that I was getting more bites with trout and flounder. And after a while, you know, live bait gets pretty expensive, so I went to the next step, gulp. And I started using gulp and the swimming minnows, and I would throw a popping cork out, because sometimes, you know, I wouldn't get bites at all, and I would just be sitting there, and I would end up dumping out a half a bucket of shrimp or giving it away because, you know, I just didn't get any bites, so all that money got wasted. So I started buying a gulp swimming mullet, which is the next step that most saltwater anglers that are new to saltwater start using. And I started using this gulp, and as I had my bobber sitting out, or my popping cork sitting out, I would cast around with the gulp. And gulp will catch pretty much anything that's in the area. It's going to catch croaker, it's going to catch sand trout, it's going to catch speckled trout, flounder, redfish. It's going to catch everything. So I was catching a lot of everything other than what I wanted to. I mean, the live shrimp would catch speckled trout and flounder occasionally and things like that, but I really, being a bass fisherman and moving to saltwater, I really just wanted to get into the lures, but I didn't know how to get into the lures because I didn't want to get skunked. So probably after a year and a half of fishing with live bait, get pretty good at using live bait and finding good places to use live bait, and throwing swimming mullets, I started trying to kind of venture off into different soft plastics from that people use down here that I would find in the bait shops and stuff like that. And after using those for a while, I started actually catching a little bit. But another thing I noticed is, like, I was having to anchor up because I can't have a popping cork with a live shrimp under it and fishing a lure and having a paddle kayak. I'd have to stop, anchor up, pull the anchor, do all that. I wanted to be able to move around because that's how I figured that was how I was going to find the fish. So one day I just said, screw it, no more live shrimp. If I get skunked, I'm going to get skunked till I learn how to fish it. And that's what I did. I stopped buying live shrimp, and I literally only threw plastics. I started trying to find new locations to fish because I started doing pretty good in Christmas Bay. I still do good in Christmas Bay. A lot of people don't like it because there's a lot of beginner fishermen out there, but I still like going to Christmas Bay. There's certain species there that I always target when I go there, and I usually catch them when I go. But I wanted to broaden my horizons because after being a bass fisherman, and you know, now I moved to lures, now I'm getting more like excited, like I'm getting into it. I started fishing other areas and started, you know, because I mean, in bass fishing, you're fishing points, you're fishing secondary points, you're fishing in the spawn, you're fishing the flats, you're fishing deep cover in the wintertime, you're fishing deep cover in the summertime, you're flipping docks, and it literally helped me knowing how to bass fish, how to fish, and how to find different things to look for in saltwater fishing. So I was able to transition all of that knowledge to saltwater, and then after fishing the saltwater and looking at, you know, I'm kind of catching these on the same areas or in the same areas and these ambush points that I was catching bass. So I started using that same tactic and really going gung-ho on points, on little drains that drain out of these backwaters, and it was working. And I was like, wow, this is pretty much just like bass fishing or crappie fishing. And so I started putting that knowledge to use from freshwater and started really catching saltwater fish, reds, trout, flounder, and I was catching them pretty much every trip. And you know, it was wild. It took a while before I started getting skunked, but now I'm spending all my money that I was spending on bass lures. Now I'm spending it on soft plastics and things like that for saltwater. And I'm just really going into it now because I started catching fish on lures. So now I got to get lures. I got to get every lure there is. I got to figure out how to use them, and and now I want to be the best saltwater fisherman. I want to know everything about saltwater. So that's what I did, is I started really digging deep in down the saltwater. And fast forward, after, you know, a while of doing that and having pretty good successful trips, I wanted to share my knowledge that I've figured out. I'm by no means a professional fisherman. Anything that I say on here or show you on here are things that I've figured out myself or I've researched, and I feel is the best way to do it. So don't take everything I tell you to the bank, but keep it in mind whenever you're doing your things, and I think it'll help you be more successful. Because, you know, anytime I watch a video of somebody that's showing you how to do something, there's things that I feel like I could add to. So just like that, I feel like anything that I do or show you, you can leave it in the comments, because I mean, there's always things that I can learn too. So I mean, that's what I really enjoy about doing this and talking to the people and things like that. And where the brand has gone is I get to talk to numerous people. I've met so many good fishermen since I've been down here now. But so I wanted to start a YouTube channel, and so my wife got me a camera. It wasn't a GoPro, but it got the job done. It let me start making my first videos and kind of share the things that I was finding out with y'all, plus also making videos to show the things that I was telling y'all in the videos, putting them to work and catching fish. So like I said, I was spending a lot of money on lures because that's one of my bad habits. But so my wife was just like, why don't you make your own lures? So I was like, okay. So she backed me and we bought everything, and I started making these lures, and I was giving them to my buddy, and I was using them and catching fish, a lot of fish, and he was using them and catching a lot of fish. And he was new to fishing saltwater, but he jumped straight into the lure game because he was fishing with me. and I was fishing lures, so he didn't really do the live shrimp, the whole process that I went through. But he started using the lures, and then one day he was just like, man, you ought to start selling these, or trying to sell these. And I was like, all right, I'll try. So shout out to George Guzman, Salty Head. He was my first customer, and the lure colors have come a long way since he first bought that first little pack from me. But they catch fish, and the videos and the pictures has really, I mean, it was not meant to sell lures. Bite&Fight Angler was meant to show you the things that I've learned while fishing, and the lures came along, and the lures have become the main source of the brand and the income of the brand. But after doing the lures for a while, I started another thing called the VIP Club with a couple of other anglers. I won't say their names because I don't know if they would approve of it, and I haven't talked to them to let them know that I'm doing this video. So, but it's two other good anglers. One is a YouTuber, very successful YouTuber, and the other is a captain, and very good captain. Does a lot of trips, always on fish. So we did a thing called the VIP Club for the Bite&Fight Angler, the Bite&Fight Angler VIP Club, and it just didn't work out the way that I was planning on it, and it got shut down. So, well, it didn't get shut down. I shut it down because it takes a little bit of money that needed to be invested in it that I didn't have at the time. So I wasn't able to give it the proper things to feed it to keep it going. But basically what it was trying to teach people how to fish saltwater and the basics and the things to use and the best, and gave discounts on different tackle and things like that. And so it was heartbreaking for it to go down, but I wasn't able to keep it going. But now I want to bring it. Teaching and talking is one of my favorite things other than fishing, is talking about fishing and teaching people and answering questions and teaching people that may not know, kind of like when I first came down here, may not know how to fish saltwater, but are really wanting to get into it. So that's really what it's for. Plus now we actually have a bonus because we have the lures, and I can teach you about the lures that I use, because that's basically how it got started, is using these lures to catch fish, and it turned into more of a lure company than what it started out as just wanting to teach people how to fish. But I appreciate everybody that supports the lures. I mean, I love doing it now because it actually helps people that weren't on fish before or using first time using lures. These are great lures for beginners. So it actually falls right into play with everything else that I was wanting to do with teaching people, beginners to saltwater, how to use lures. But I do need to get back into showing the people that aren't comfortable with lures yet how to use the live bait setups, the dead bait setups, just going out to the surf and throwing a bait out and waiting on catching whiting. That is a blast. I don't know that's one thing that I love doing. Like when I go to the beach with my family, we're always going to have a rod out with a dead piece of shrimp, and there is keys that I found that when I go do that kind of stuff, that I catch more whiting. So I've even learned those kind of things, and I haven't shared all of this stuff with y'all because I've gotten so caught up with these lures. But I want to start getting back to sharing everything that I know with y'all through video. So I'm going to try to start doing that more. I apologize for getting off track with that, but I don't want to apologize because the lures are great, And if you've used the lures, comment how you like them. I love the lures. I love making the lures. I love going to the shows and meeting all the new people and new people that are trying out the lures. And we got the clothes, we got the hats, we got the shirts, hoodies. We had the fishing gloves, sold out of those. Face buffs. We have, I mean, the brand is just growing, but I want it to grow in more than just the apparel and the lures. I want it to also be known as a grounds of learning for those that are new to, or just looking for advice on how to use different kind of things, or how to set up different kind of things. Most of my videos that are with lures though will be Bite&Fight Angler lures, because I feel like honestly they're the best lures that I've used. So I put my heart and soul into figuring out different colors, and you know, putting all the work in out here in the shop. And you know, I dip the tails to give them the max durability, where I don't bond the plastics together. So I put a lot of time and effort in these lures, so I really believe in these lures. So that is what, if I'm teaching you something or telling you something about using lures as lure fishing, it will be with these lures. So I just wanted to take a moment, kind of step back, let y'all know where I've come from, where the brand started, what it started for, where it's gotten to. And now we actually have 4 pro staff that work with us with that use the lures. They've won tournaments, they placed in tournaments. Shout out to Lewis, Corey, Robert, and Clayton. I appreciate what they do. They are always on the water taking pictures and helping me promote these lures. They're big believers in the lures. So I mean, it's just, I'm rambling now, so I'm gonna go ahead and just say I appreciate everything. I appreciate all y'all's support. If you watch this video all the way through, I can't wait to see y'all at the Houston Fishing Show, booth 456. Yes, we did get a booth. So we will have the lures there. I've already talked to the pro staff guys. They all said that they're gonna be stopping by. I don't know if they'll all be there at the same time. I don't know if they'll be there every day. But when you come to the booth, I guarantee you, if you have a question, we're gonna answer it. If we can't answer it, we'll figure it out and we'll let you know. But I mean, come to the booth and let's talk some fishing, and let's talk about these lures, and let's talk about where you're fishing at and how you're doing. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me and listening to this long little story. I just wanted to get a video up and let y'all see everything that we've got going on. I appreciate it.